What is up, Breaking Bad fans? Kino here, and we are back with another Breaking Bad log. Today we're looking at the 6th episode of Season 1, Crazy Handful of Nothing. Now, we opened this episode with Walt and Jesse preparing to cook again. You'll remember the last episode, Walt decided that cooking meth was preferable to taking charity, and now that he started his chemotherapy again, he needs a method of paying for that. However, he tells Jesse that from now on, he wants no connection to the business side of selling meth. He only wants to be involved with the production side, and he wants absolutely no more bloodshed. However, we intercut this speech with a scene of him walking away from an exploded building. We also see that he's bald now and has blood dripping from his nose. It's an incredible teaser and also great foreshadowing to what awaits Walt in this episode. After the title, Walt goes for his first round of chemotherapy. Skyler wants to wait there with him, but Walt tells her to go home. After the treatment, he pays for the session himself, asking for a few days to allow for the check to clear. We then see him teaching his chemistry class, and he talks about the differences between sudden and gradual reactions. Gradual happens so slow that you don't notice it while it's happening, while sudden reactions are explosive and dangerous. This is of course a metaphor for the show. We have both Walt's explosive moments of excitement and danger, and also his more slow moral decline over the course of the series that's much harder to notice as it's happening. However, Walt begins to feel sick during the lecture and goes to the bathroom to puke. He's helped out by Hugo, a friendly janitor. After the class, he attends a support group for cancer patients with his family. His family complain that Walt is distant and disappears for hours at a time without telling them where he's at. He technically tells the truth and says that he takes trips out to nature. In reality, though, these trips are to cook meth with Jesse in the desert. While cooking a batch, he almost collapses. Jesse notices his chemo marker and realizes that he has cancer just like his aunt had. He also puts it together why Walt is doing all of this, namely to make money for his family once he's gone. Walt then has him finish a batch, showing Walt's growing confidence in Jesse's abilities. That night, Jesse goes out and sells the meth himself. He manages to sell nearly an ounce, earning $2,600 to split between the two of them. However, Walt is upset that they're earning so little for the risks that they're taking in cooking meth. He demands that Jesse sell their product to a distributor. With Crazy 8 dead, the new man in charge is a high-level dealer named Tuco. Jesse says that it's too dangerous to get involved with a guy like him, but Walt doesn't care. It's also a hypocritical move, considering he said earlier that he didn't want to be involved in the business side of it, but now he's telling Jesse on how to sell the meth. Meanwhile, Hank finds out that the mask he recovered from the desert is actually from Walt's school. He shows up and takes a look through Walt's lab. He notices that many pieces of lab equipment are missing, and deduces that they were used to cook the meth out in the desert. Not suspecting Walt, though, he instead thinks that the janitor Hugo is the one that stole it. He has Hugo's car searched, and they find a joint in his car, which ends up with Hugo being fired. Hugo happens to be the first innocent victim of Walt's actions, as he had nothing to do with the meth being stolen. That was all Walt, but Hugo is the one who ended up getting blamed. He won't be the last innocent victim in Walt's game, though. Meanwhile, Jesse meets with Tuco, using an introduction from Skinny Pete, who was in the same cell block as Tuco earlier. Tuco is a crazed and violent drug addict, snorting meth off of a Bowie knife. He likes the product that Jesse brings him, though, and agrees to the deal. However, he demands the product up front, with payment to come later. When Jesse tries to back out, Tuco beats him to a bloody pulp, sending him to the hospital. When Walt learns what happened to Jesse, he decides to confront Tuco himself. Because he's starting to lose his hair from the chemotherapy, he decides to shave his head, which makes him look much more intimidating. He then goes to Tuco's headquarters, bringing a bag with him of what appears to be meth. This is where he first introduces himself as Heisenberg, which would become his alter identity. Werner Heisenberg was a German physicist most well known for his uncertainty principle. He was also one of the leading scientists in the Nazi nuclear weapon program. While historians debate how sympathetic he really was towards the Nazis, it's clear that this name is meant to invoke both the brilliance and the danger of science, which really is what Walt is all about. Walter demands that Tuco pay for the method he stole and extra for Jesse's pain and suffering. He then grabs one of the crystals he brought and throws it to the ground, which causes a massive explosion. The crystal is actually fulminated mercury, which Walt had talked about earlier to his class. He then threatens to blow up the rest of the mercury unless Tuco gives him what he wants. Tuco, realizing that Walter is prepared to die, gives him his money. They also make a deal for Walt to sell him more meth next week. As Walt leaves, we get the scene of destruction from the opening. When Walt gets into his car, he screams with a mixture of adrenaline and fear. This also relates back to the title of the episode, Crazy Handful of Nothing. The title comes from the film Cool Hand Luke, and refers to having a bad hand in poker. Despite Walter being weaker physically than Tuco, he's able to bluff his way to victory by pretending that he's not afraid of death, when clearly from the scene in the car, he was afraid of that situation. Also, earlier in the episode, Walter played cards with his family. He managed to bluff Hank and win with a handful of nothing. This is of course a metaphor for how Walter fools Hank throughout the course of the series and manages to run a meth business right under his nose. Mythbusters also busted this episode for a few reasons. One was that fulminated mercury doesn't appear as crystals and is instead a powder that one would not mistake for crystal meth. Two is that a person cannot throw it with enough force to detonate it. And lastly, an explosion like what we saw would have absolutely killed everyone in that room, including Walt. A little bit of behind the scenes trivia. During the explosion, you can hear Howard Dean's infamous scream. Howard Dean was a presidential candidate in 2004, and during a speech he made this very loud yeah sound in his microphone.
Not only are we going to New Hampshire, Tom Harkin, we're going to South Carolina and Oklahoma and Arizona and North Dakota and New Mexico. And we're going to California and Texas and New York. And we're going to South Dakota and Oregon and Washington and Michigan. And then we're going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House. Yeah!
This became something of a meme in the media and was played over and over again in the news, which some people think contributed to him losing the election. It's used here in a very similar way to the much more famous Wilhelm scream, as a kind of audio Easter egg. And that is pretty much the episode. Thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next Breaking Bad log coming soon. You got one part of that wrong. This is not Kino. Tommy Smith, Abdallah Al-Amari, Russell, Sean, Heart of Markness, Broccoli, Logan, Clean, John Reyna, Jesse Sterling, Andrew Stewart, Ops Racing Media, Daz J. Kit, Conan Higgins, Irish Nachos, Sam Searlin, Don Lucania, Celery Man, Jenna Marie Johnson.